Own a small business? Should you get a business credit card? Are the protections on business credit cards the same as personal credit cards? And what are some of the best business credit cards available today? We'll answer these questions and more on this, the 134th episode of the DoughRoller Podcast.
Welcome to the DoughRoller Podcast, where the best thing money can buy is financial freedom. We help you make more, spend less, and invest the rest. And now your host, Rob Berger.
Whether you're just starting out, buried under a mountain of debt, or well on your way to financial freedom, this is the podcast to help you take your finances to the next level. Hey, everybody. Hope you're having a great day. So today I'm going to respond to a question that a listener named Jeff emailed me. We'll get to that in a minute, but it's about business credit cards. And I thought I'd kind of expand on his question just to talk about whether they're a good idea, how are they different than personal credit cards, and of course, what are some of the better options out there? So that's the main topic of today. Before we get to that, a couple of things. One, I was surfing the net, and one of my good blogging friends, Jay Money, we actually had him on the show. He blogs over at Budgets Are Sexy. Great name for a blog. He has another site that he runs called rockstarfinance.com. And what this blog is, he scours the internet for personal finance bloggers, finds the best articles out there, and then shares them on Rockstar Finance. That's the purpose of Rockstar Finance. I'm not sure if he has some maybe original content or his own content, I think, but it's primarily sharing what he thinks are some of the best articles out there from the personal finance blogosphere. So something worth checking out. But one of the pages on Rockstar Finance that I wanted to share with you today is he maintains what he calls the ultimate list of blogger net worth. This is a list of those personal finance bloggers who on their blog report, some in great detail, their net worth. And in fact, it's something that Jay Money does on Budgets Are Sexy. But he has got a list of, I'm looking at it now. It's 118, I think. 118 bloggers. They're not all, I guess, sort of hardcore personal finance and investing bloggers. A lot of them are. But some of them are a little different. But the thing they have in common is they report their net worth, and he lists their net worth and then links to their site where they report the net worth. And I find that kind of thing interesting. You will not find me on that list. I don't know, for better or worse, I don't report my net worth on my blog, but obviously a lot of folks do. You can find this at rockstarfinance.com/blogger-net-worths, plural, WRTHS. There's an S at the end. You could just Google Rockstar Finance Blogger Net Worth. I'm sure it'll be the first thing that comes up. And so some of these folks I know, but most of them I actually don't know, which kind of surprises me a bit because, I've been around the personal finance blogosphere since 2007. Topping the list is a blog called Asset Grinder, $2,160,878, but there's an asterisk next to it. And I'm thinking, what does that mean? So if you scroll down, it turns out that's in Canadian dollars. So there you go. You have to do the currency exchange, I guess. And it goes down from there. I am 1%. That's number 2. Shouldn't he be number 1? Anyway, he's number 2. I don't know who I've heard of the blog, but I don't know anything about it. A little over 1.8 million. Save, invest, give, just under 1.7 million. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, the poor guy at the bottom, old school coinage, negative net worth, 134,000. Number 2, Object Wealth, or I should say second from the bottom, Object Wealth has a negative net worth of $131,582. So why do I point out the second to last? Well, I do that because that's Krista Miller, and I know Krista because I interviewed her for this show. And in fact, she will be on the show. She blogs at objectwealth.com. She will be on the show the next episode tomorrow. You'll hear from Krista Miller. And she has a phenomenal story. You talk about money, we like asset allocation, investing, retirement. How about this? How about going to school as a single mom? She has a fascinating story to tell. She has seen it all from credit card debt, school loans, trying to save for retirement. We talk about timeshares. I mean, her interview really covers just about everything. She will be on the show tomorrow. Have a number of good shows already in the pipeline. I'm gonna talk about. I had a podcast on robo advisors, right? That was podcast 132. I'm gonna have Adam Nash on the show, who is the CEO of Wealthfront. He'll be on in episode 138. Todd Tressiter, I'm interviewing him, podcast episode 137. He's a former hedge fund manager, retired at 35. That's an interesting story. But the other thing I'm going to squeeze in there in show 136, so that'll be right after Krista Miller, is a podcast on whether the cost of robo-advisors is worth it. Are they worth the cost? This has come up in a number of contexts where folks will email me and say, I'm at Betterment, it's 15 basis points, or depending on how much money you have there, or 25 basis points. Is it worth it, or should I move to Vanguard? Or I'm at Wealthfront, but I'm a government employee. I have access to the thrift savings plan. Should I move it? Or, should I move out of there, go to the TSP? Or actually it would be the reverse. I'm at the TSP, which is a 401k for government workers. I can keep it there even after I leave, but should I leave it there, or should I move it to a place like Wealthfront or Future Advisors or Motif or any of the other sort of automated investment services? So what I want to do in that podcast, and again, it'll be podcast 136, 2 podcasts from now, I'm going to cover the question, are these services worth the cost? And at least how I think through that issue. And yes, we're going to use an Excel spreadsheet, so it'll good times had by all, podcast 136. So that's what we're going to do there. Today, business credit cards. I know this won't apply to everybody. I guess no single podcast applies to everybody, but I got an email and I wanted to cover it. And it came from a listener named Jeff, and here's what he wrote. He said, I just spoke with my CPA about a new gig I'm starting out on with a new company where I am going on as an independent contractor. I'll be traveling often and incurring business expenses. My CPA highly recommends I secure a separate credit card for all my business expenses so that bookkeeping is greatly simplified. I was hoping you could recommend a card you thought was best for this purpose. Is there an advantage to having a, quote, business card versus a personal card? Any advice is greatly appreciated. Well, Jeff, that's a great question. Again, it applies, as you mentioned in your case, an independent contractor, freelancer, folks that own a small business. Maybe you're a professional, you're an accountant, a lawyer, a real estate agent, whatever. You've got a small company. How should you deal with that? First of all, should you have a separate credit card? And should it be a business card, or can you just use a personal card? And, regardless of those answers, what card should you use? Are there some better than others? So I'm going to try to cover all of that in this podcast, do my best to cover it, give you my thoughts on it. So let's first start out with, should you have a separate credit card? Putting aside for a moment whether it's a business credit card or a personal credit card. To me, the answer is absolutely yes. And it's one of the things that I did, and I'm thankful that I did early on. And to me, the single most important reason is that it simplifies your accounting and your taxes. I know, and in my case, I have a business credit card, but I know that every charge on that card is a business expense. And I know that all the charges on my personal credit cards are not a business expense. It's an easy way to keep things separate, and it just makes tax time so much easier. I get an annual statement that I can give to my accountant, and it just keeps everything much, much easier. The other thing I do, this is sort of a tip, how do I track my accounting? That could be a whole separate podcast, but I'll tell you briefly what I do. I use, it used to be called outright.com. That company was purchased by GoDaddy. And it's basically an online accounting tool for small businesses. I used to use QuickBooks. QuickBooks for me was just too complicated. I don't have inventory. I don't have employees. I have a fairly simple accounting. Now, your business, may be much more sophisticated than mine. But for me, it was just it just had layers and layers of complexity that I just didn't need. So I went to outright.com. It was later purchased by GoDaddy. And I log in, All of my transactions are there. But here's the thing as it relates to credit cards is that I can connect my credit card, my business credit card, to this accounting package. And every charge that I incur on the credit card gets automatically sucked into the GoDaddy accounting system. I don't have to enter it manually. It's just there. It's automatically transferred over. And I can categorize the expense, and then the accounting system will remember how I categorize certain expenses and will automatically do that for me. And so I don't ever have to enter a credit card charge in my business's books. It's done automatically for me. So that's again, first of all, that's another reason to keep a separate credit card for your business. And if you use a package like what GoDaddy's offers, and I don't even know what it costs, but it's not much. I don't know if it's $10 a month or something like that. It'll bring in that information automatically for you and right into the expense category. I can review it anytime I want online. The software does a lot more, of course. I can issue invoices and from within the system, email the invoice to the customer. When a payment comes in, it's just a couple clicks of the mouse and button, and I've got it recorded, and it shows that invoice is being paid, and it adds that payment to my income. And so it's very easy to use. If you want to check it out, you can do so. Just the link I have for you is DoughRoller.net/getpaid, one word. That is an affiliate link. Actually, the first time I've used it, but as I was putting this together, I thought, well, they've got an affiliate link, so why not include it? By the way, for those maybe that are new, whenever I give you a link where I get some kind of benefit, doesn't matter what it is, I tell you it's an affiliate link. That's what I mean when I say it's an affiliate link. Think of it as, if you use this, Rob gets a benefit. My sort of rules on affiliate links are a few things. One, I only recommend or promote products that either I use or have used or would use if I needed them. So that's generally sort of my rule of thumb. If I don't think it's worth it to me to use, then why would I recommend it to someone else? So that's my rule. And then obviously I tell you it's an affiliate link, so that you know. So anyway, DoughRoller.net/getpaid. I've used the service. I used it before GoDaddy bought outright. So I don't know how long I've used it. I want to say 3 years. It's just very, very easy. I like it a lot. But regardless of what accounting software you use, having a separate credit card, you can usually link those charges right into the accounting software, and it just makes it automatic, very, very simple, and very, very helpful to me. Some other reasons, though, to consider a separate card, and in this case, a business credit card. So there are some pros and cons to business credit cards. One advantage potentially is, if you've set up a business entity, you're an LLC, you're an S corp. One of the reasons you do that is to shield you from liability, from lawsuits, personal liability. There is a thing called piercing the corporate veil, a wildly complex legal concept that I am not at all going to delve into. But one of the things that's important is to maintain that shield that you get, that veil they call it, is to treat your business separate as a separate entity. And so I like to do that. I have a separate business checking account. I have a separate business credit card. I want to keep it separate from my personal finances. Now, I don't mean to suggest that if you use a personal credit card for a business expense, that an individual could sue you and pierce what they call the corporate veil because you used a personal credit card on a business expense. But from my perspective, it just makes sense to keep it separate. Why take any risks? So I have a separate business checking account, separate business credit card. Now, that doesn't, by the way, if you have a business card, shield you from liability for the charges that are on the card. Virtually all business credit cards that I've seen, particularly for small businesses, freelancers, independent contractors, you are going to be personally liable for the charges on the credit card. By the way, some folks actually describe that as a disadvantage. I'm not sure why that's a disadvantage. You're also personally liable for charges on your personal credit card. But in any event, the other possible benefit is business credit cards could help your business build its credit. Now, that's not something I've ever had to worry about. I don't borrow. I've never had a need for a loan, so I I've never even thought about the credit worthiness of my business. But for some folks, that's going to be important, and so that's something to think about. Now, there are some potential disadvantages of business credit cards. There was the Credit Card Act of 2009, and it doesn't apply to business cards. It applies to personal credit cards, and so you will find articles that talk about this and really kind of beat up on business credit cards. I was reading one article by Clark Howard, who I don't think I've actually ever listened to his show, radio personality, very popular, very consumer friendly. He's definitely on the side of the consumer, and I know he's very popular. He doesn't like business credit cards. He thinks you should avoid them. I don't know that I agree. In fact, I could say I don't agree with that, but I do think he makes some valid points. Those protections in the Credit Card Act, they don't apply to business credit cards. So, for example, limitations on increasing of interest rates, issues dealing with how payments are applied as between, say, 0% balances with a 0% and balances with an interest rate. They're different for business credit cards than they are personal credit cards. And that's absolutely worth considering. Although, in my experience, particularly with the better-known credit card issuers, they will, in their agreements, sometimes impose sort of limitations on themselves, even though the Credit Card Act of 2009 doesn't require them to. So they will tell you, for example, and this is one of the things that Clark Howard had mentioned, they will tell you how much your grace period will be, how long it will be, even if what they're offering you, so to speak, is greater than they're required to under federal law. Another thing that comes up is whether your liability is capped if there's fraud, if someone steals your card or your number. Well, the regulations may be different, but if you go in and look at the terms and conditions of a credit card, most of the big issuers that I've seen limit your liability as a matter of the terms and conditions of the card. So I guess in some ways it may require a little extra work. But to me, the cards I've used, I use a Capital One, which I'll talk about in a minute. I'm perfectly comfortable with the terms of the card, how they've treated me, the interest rates, although I pay my card in full every month, so I don't really care about the interest rates. But it is worth knowing that the Credit Card Act of 2009 doesn't apply to business credit cards. Again, I haven't found that to be an issue, but some think it's a big issue. Clark Howard's one of them. And so I wanted to mention that it certainly is a disadvantage, right? I mean, you'd prefer for these protections to apply to business credit cards. They don't. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, I've used a business credit card for years now. I've never had any issues, but certainly worth knowing. So the long and short of it is this. I absolutely think at a minimum you need a separate card and you only use it for your business expenses. For me personally, I prefer to have a business card. Just keeps it totally separate. It's in the name of my business, and that's my preference. But again, as Clark Howard pointed out, and I will link to this in the show notes, which you'll find at DoughRoller.net/podcast134. There are some definite disadvantages to think about. And again, from my point of view, it just is a matter of scrutinizing the terms and conditions of a card you're considering. Now, let's kind of turn to that then. Well, what kinds of business credit cards are out there and how should you evaluate them? And what features should you consider? Well, the first thing is that picking a business credit card in many ways is similar to picking a personal credit card. Part of it's going to hinge on how you plan to use it and what you want out of it. For example, some business credit cards offer 0% offers, balance transfers, and 0% on purchases. So that may be important to you. Maybe you're starting out a new business and you're going to have a big purchase of some equipment or computers or whatever, and you'd love to get that on a 0% card so that you can pay it off over time. Well, you're going to obviously want to focus on those 0% offers, and I'll give you some as some suggestions. On the other hand, Jeff mentioned this, he's going to travel a lot. So he may be very focused on the travel rewards or the rewards he gets, I guess presumably from flying and hotel stays. And so that is often a focus. And we'll talk about some good examples there. A third type is just the straight up cash rewards card. And you'll see as we walk through some examples of these cards, they tend to be, as you would expect, very focused on business type expenses. So there are plenty of business cards out there that will offer 2 or even 3% or more in cash back for certain categories of expenses like office supply stores, cell phones, internet, things like that, and then maybe 1% for every other purchase. But there are definitely some good cashback reward business cards. We'll look at some of those. The final kind of type of business credit card I'll mention, and this comes primarily from American Express, is there are charge cards. So just as a refresher, a charge card you have to pay off in full every month, right? They don't have terms where you can extend the payments over a period of time like a typical credit card. So that's the difference. A charge card, you say, well, why would people want that? Well, I think some folks want a charge card because it just imposes discipline on them. If they have a credit card, they fear that they may pay less than the full balance and end up paying interest over time. And a charge card imposes that discipline. So that is a fourth type of card. We'll look at some of those again, primarily from American Express. But it is important as you're looking at your options to understand that difference. Maybe you don't want a charge card, so you're going to want to make sure, hey, is this a charge card versus a credit card, and that's the primary difference. Now, before we get to some specific card options that I want to share with you, I want to talk just a couple minutes about features, because there are some features that you want to consider depending again on how you're going to use the card. The first is foreign transaction fees. Some business credit cards charge a foreign transaction fee and some don't. What is that? It's simply when you're over in Europe, for example, when you're out of the country and you make a purchase on your card, some credit cards will charge you a fee in addition to obviously the amount that you've charged on the card, and some don't. So if you're going to be traveling overseas outside the country, this is a big deal. You want to find one that does not charge a foreign transaction fee. If you don't expect to go out of the country, then obviously it's not an issue. But that's the first feature. The second one, of course, is annual fee. You always want to look at that. Some business cards, by and large, charge an annual fee, I think more so than many personal credit cards, but not all of them. And so, you tend to pay an annual fee as the rewards on the card go up. So, it may very well be that an annual fee is well worth it for you, depending on the rewards the card offers and how you're going to use it. But again, you need to do that analysis, and that's something to look for. The third thing, of course, is the interest rate. Again, in my case, I have no idea what the interest rate is on my business credit card. I have never, knock on wood, gone a month without paying the balance in full. So I have no idea. And if that's you, you're going to pay it off in full every month. You probably don't care about the interest rate either. However, if you are going to pay off a balance over time, then obviously the interest rate is going to be very important. You'll want to check that out. The last thing I'll mention, and this dovetails into the rewards part of a credit card. This is true, by the way, whether it's a personal card or a business card, but this is something really important to look out for. You'll regularly see cards, particularly when it's a points or miles card, where they'll advertise, 2x points or miles, 3x, 5x, sometimes 6x. So in other words, you might earn 6 miles or 6 points for every dollar spent, or 3 miles or 3 points for every dollar spent. That's great, but what you have to focus on is the redemption value of those points or miles. Are they all worth an amount basically equal to 1%? So that if you get 3x points, they're actually worth 3%. And it's not always the case that they are. Sometimes it depends on how you use those points or miles. As an example, I have the Capital One Venture Card. I earn 2 miles for every dollar spent. However, they're only worth 1%, making it effectively a 2% card, right? Because I get 2 miles. They're only worth that 1% for each mile if I use it for travel. If I use it to pay for travel expenses I've charged to the venture card. If I use it to pay for expenses charged to the card other than travel, they're worth 0.5%, which makes the 2 miles effectively worth just 1%. Now, I'm aware of that. We use it for travel, so I get the full benefit of those miles. But the point is, as you're looking at your options, you absolutely want to make sure you understand the redemption value of the rewards that you're going to earn. Okay, so with that, let me walk through some of the major credit card issuers, and I'll just give you my thoughts on the cards and how they work. And I'll point out some of my favorites. Why don't we start with Capital One, since that's the card I have. So Capital One has what they call the Spark line of business credit cards. Spark, that's what they call their business credit cards. And again, I'll link to all of this in the show notes. But they have a number of different Spark cards. They have sort of two levels. They have Spark and Spark Select, and that's how they do it. So they have like a Spark Miles for Business and a Spark Miles Select for Business, and the terms are different. So you gotta look at this carefully. Now, again, I'll link to a page that Capital One has that lays out a chart. Very easy to compare, but just looking at the Spark Miles for Business, for example, you get 2 miles per dollar on all purchases, plus the opportunity to earn 30 bonus miles. And if that sounds familiar, it's because it's basically identical to the Capital One Venture card, which is the personal credit card version of this same offer. Spark Miles for Business, as you might have guessed, that's the credit card that I use. So effectively, I get 2 miles per dollar spent on every business purchase as well from that card, and 2 miles per dollar on all purchases for personal use on my Venture card. But the Spark Miles Select for Business is a little different. You don't get as many miles. You get 1.5 miles per dollar on all business purchases, but you get a 0% intro APR until, in this case, June 2015. Obviously, that'll extend out as we move forward in time. But that's one of the big differences between the cards. So there's no right or wrong here. It just depends on what you need. But there are other differences. The Spark Miles for Business, the one I have, there's no annual fee the first year, but then there is $59 annual fee thereafter. For the Spark Miles Select for Business, there's no annual fee. So they have others. They have the Spark Cash and Cash Select, where you get cash back rather than miles. Basically works the same way. And the differences between the Spark Cash for Business and the Spark Cash Select for Business are the same as the difference between Miles and Miles Select. So I like the Spark line of business credit cards. I think they're quite good. I think they should certainly be on the top of your list in terms of cards that you're considering. As I said, I've had the Spark Miles for Business for quite some time, and I've been very happy with it. Now, that being said, there's some other great ones. Chase, their line of business cards is called Ink. They have Ink Plus and Ink Cash. They've had others. It kind of changes from time to time. These are very good offers. I mean, I think they're every bit as good as what Capital One offers. They are different. I think the Ink Plus is sort of their sort of premium travel rewards card. And it has a lot to offer. 50,000 bonus points when you spend 5,000 in the first 3 months. There is an annual fee, not the first year, but it does jump to $95 after that. So it's not a cheap card, but there's no foreign transaction fees. Perfect if you're going to be traveling overseas. And then what they do is, in terms of earning points, you earn 2x points per dollar on the first 50,000 spent at gas stations and hotel accommodations. And then 1x points on all other purchases. So again, it depends in part on how you're going to use the card. But both of these cards, I think, are good cards, definitely worth considering. Now, let's move to American Express. American Express may be best known for their business cards. And, they have an interesting lineup of cards. So they have the Platinum and the Gold business cards, which you may be familiar with, but they have several others that are pretty interesting. They have the Starwood Preferred Guest business credit card. That would be ideal if you stay at Starwood hotels. I mean, it's a really good card in terms of the rewards, but it's only going to be, I think, an option if, you regularly stay. You're traveling a lot and you're staying at Starwood properties. It can really pay off, but I think it is limited in that regard. If you don't travel a lot, don't stay at Starwood properties, it's not worth considering. They offer a line of Delta Sky Miles cards, actually 3 of them, believe it or not. And again, perfect if you're just a frequent flyer of Delta. Can be very rewarding. But again, if you're not flying Delta, a lot throughout the year, probably not going to be your best bet. I think in terms of sort of general business cards that are worth considering, apart from folks that may fly Delta a lot or stay at Starwood, would be either the Blue for Business credit card, which is sort of a cash back card, so that's one option. And then the True Earnings business card from Costco and American Express, I think a good option, obviously, particularly if you shop at Costco a lot. And one you've probably not heard of, they also have a Lowe's Business Rewards card. So, if you that would be ideal for contractors and the like, particularly if you're obviously shopping at Lowe's a lot, could be a good option. Most of these cards come with annual fees, so definitely something to think about. Again, I'll have a link to the American Express page where you can really quickly compare all of these. Because I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you in the podcast, but if you go to the link, and it's a long link, but I'll link to it in the show notes, you can check that out. By the way, I had a listener email me the other day and suggest that I use link shorteners. You can shorten links that redirect to these longer links. And what I do is I do that actually for the podcast to get to the show notes. When you go in this case to DoughRoller.net/podcast134. That's not actually the URL of the notes for this podcast. But I've created it because it's easy to remember, and you can type it in easily. It will redirect you to the actual URL on the blog with the show notes, and then you can get all of these links. I don't tend to create shorter links for every single resource I mentioned in a podcast because, well, that would take me forever. But again, go to the show notes. You'll see a link to the American Express page. All these cards are on one page, easy to compare. So there you go. A couple others that I want to mention. Citibank has the AA Advantage card. If you're flying American Airlines, it's the business card to get. But again, you've got to be a frequent flyer on American Airlines for this to make any sense. One that you may not consider too often, but it has some good offers, is U.S. Bank actually. And they have what they call the Business Edge Cash Rewards Card, and it kind of gives you a little bit of everything. You get a 0% APR on purchases for 9 billing cycles, but you also get 3% cash back on cell phones, gas, and office supplies, and then 1% on everything else. So that's sort of, I think, a pretty good all-purpose cashback rewards, a business card. I'll have that in the show notes. They have others. They have some interesting ones. They have an Ace Rewards, Ace Hardware. They have an Ace Rewards Visa business card. So they have some other options. I'll link to all of this, but I think the Business Edge Cash Rewards card is sort of their sort of primary business card that I think would apply to a lot of folks. And the last one I'll mention is Bank of America. Bank of America has what I think is a pretty good card as well, and it's their Business Cash Rewards MasterCard. You get 3% back at gas stations and office supply stores, 2% at restaurants, 1% on everything else. So I know I've kind of run through the options very quickly, but again, I'll link to them in the show notes. For me, at the end of the day, I think the Capital One offers are great. I think Chase is great. American Express is, I think, a little more niche-y, so it kind of depends on your business needs. They can absolutely be the best, but it depends on how you're using it. For the most part, they're better for frequent travelers. I think the Bank of America card I just mentioned is I think a good offer. I think the U.S. Bank offers are good as well. You can find business cards obviously at regional banks, credit unions, smaller institutions. Obviously I can't cover the landscape of every business credit card option out there. I tend to stick with the major credit card issuers. That being said, if you know of an option that I've not mentioned, would love to hear about it. I'm happy to include it in the show notes. So even if you're listening to this, a year from now, if there's a good business credit card offer out there, shoot me an email, dr@DoughRoller.net. Be happy to share it with everybody. And so there you go. That's my take in response to Jeff's question. Whatever you do, absolutely keep your charges separate for business. It will make your life so much easier. Well, that brings the show to a close. Hey, I hope you have a great day. Remember, you can always reach me, dr@DoughRoller.net. Would love to hear from you. I read and reply to every email. So shoot me an email, dr@DoughRoller.net. Otherwise, have a great day. And we'll be back, as I said, tomorrow with a great interview with Krista Miller of ObjectWealth.com. You'll want to hear it. It's a remarkable story. Hey, until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.